I am here in Gilbert, Arizona at the Gilbert Riparian Preserve, one of the most awesome places in the Phoenix Valley. Used to be a cornfield, then they turned it back into a natural biome, and look at this specimen right here. This is the Velvet Mesquite. Ladies and gentlemen, the Velvet Mesquite is the most common native mesquite tree in the Phoenix, Tucson areas. It is the true local native mesquite of southern Arizona. It can grow up to 30 feet tall. My guess is this one's around 20 or maybe a little less. It's typically a multi-trunk tree, and this one is no different. It has a compound leaf and a long pod that can range from tan or with or without purple streaks to dark purple. Now these guys are all freshies. They were these blooms, and then once the bloom has done its thing, then the pods come. And I'm going to tell you about these pods because they're pretty nutritious. The Velvet is our tree of choice for planting in and around Tucson and Phoenix, and it is a long lifespan. It's very drought tolerant. It's cold hardy up to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty amazing. I've never seen one of these freeze in all my years here in Phoenix area. And its mature trees can have a 15-foot canopy, which, to be honest with you, I've seen them way bigger than that. Mesquites are members of the legume family. And like many legumes, they restore nitrogen to the soil. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria in the soil form a mutualistic relationship with nodules on the mesquite's root, which frees nitrogen for plant consumption. It's a great tree to plant next to anything that really can use that deep underground nitrogen fixing, which is all sorts of fruit trees. If you're planting fruit trees, plant one of these too. I mean, I always think of the perfect garden or orchard in Arizona to be one that's 50% natives, 50% whatever the heck you want, if you can grow it. But they go so well. It's a great shader for more sensitive fruit trees. So this is where it's at, guys. The Velvet Mesquite is winter deciduous. This means it loses its leaves during the winter months of December through February. And because of its large root system, it can keep most of the leaves through summer drought periods. In warmer regions, the leaves stay on until just before the new leaves grow in the spring. So probably here in the city of Phoenix, where we get so many, where we have so much radiant heat from the concrete, all the damn landscaping rock, all that stuff that makes it way hot here, they oftentimes don't even lose their leaves until right before. So, the Velvet Mesquite is a massive root system which can grow down as far as 50 feet to reach the water table. Taproot can be as big around as the trunk itself. Second, lateral root system spreads out beyond the crown, 6 to 12 inches below the soil surface, catch and absorb any rain that may fall. Large thorns on young branches protect the tree from overeager browsers. So let's come on in. I mean, this one, some old Velvet Mesquites can be almost like an impenetrable fortress of branches, and this one's not. This one is included in that, and you can see some of the thorns on the branches. The mesquite, along with desert ironwoods, are considered to be nurse trees to other desert plants like the saguaro. Now, we are in the riparian preserve, and there's not too many saguaros out here, but you see them all the time out in the desert. When you get way out in the wild country, you'll see saguaros and mesquites go together like peas and carrots. Its foliage provides cover for large animals like javelina and mule deer as well, and many species of rodents dig their burrows under the mesquite tree. You'll see a lot of pack rat nests under all of the major trees of the Sonoran Desert, including this Velvet Mesquite. And the three main trees of the Sonoran Desert are the Velvet Mesquite, the Palo Verde, and the Desert Ironwood. And you can check out the video I already did on the Desert Ironwood on the Arizona Trees tree profile playlist. The temperature under the tree can be 15 degrees cooler than the surrounding desert. I mean, if you're out in the middle of the desert in the summer, this is where you want to come hang out until that sun goes down. Native Americans used mesquite pods as a staple food. They made tea, syrup, and ground meal called pinole from various parts of the tree. Mesquite bark was used to make baskets, fabrics, and medicine. The wood of the mesquite tree burns slowly and is used as firewood and to make an aromatic charcoal for barbecuing. Very common for that, and I've done it myself, and the aroma is just magnificent. The Velvet Mesquite is abundant in its habitat, although mesquite bosques are in decline because of the falling water tables and invasion by tamarisk trees. The shrubby form of a mesquite has been invading grasslands throughout the Southwest. Velvet Mesquite is a tough desert plant, well adapted to the harsh conditions. There are 3 native mesquite trees to the Southwest. The Velvet Mesquite, the honey mesquite, and the screw bean mesquite. And I've already talked about the introduced Chilean mesquite, which is all over landscapes throughout the big cities in the desert. But the Velvet Mesquite is the one that's so commonly known here, the most abundant. But the screw bean and the honey mesquite are also native to the Southwest. Before settlement of the Southwest by Europeans, species were separated by geographic barriers. But with the introduction of livestock, mesquites have spread and now have a more or less continuous distribution across the Southwest, which allows for increased hybridization. Sometimes it can be real hard to tell the difference between a velvet mesquite and a honey mesquite. Velvet mesquites are thicker, and honey mesquite has the leaf distribution is a little wider. Less leaves and bigger and more spread out. The Chilean mesquite, the introduced one, even smaller leaves and even more per stem. So the velvet, you can remember them. They'll have the thorns. They'll have the larger leaves than the common Chilean. And these beautiful pods, man. The screw bean will have a pod that's like twirled around, and I'll post a picture of that. But the velvet mesquite is really one of those trees that we need more of. We need to be planting them throughout our cities. We need to bring back a lot of the old mesquite bosques, mesquite forests that used to be here before we tore them all down to build our settlements. And now that we have our settlements here and our big gigantic metropolises, and it's May, end of May 2020, and we're almost into the 110s in the Phoenix area, and a lot of this radiant heat that comes from the heat island that we've created with our civilization could be minimized by bringing back these beautiful native trees that can provide so much shade, great barriers. I mean, look at this thing. It's almost like a just big gigantic shrub. Plant these on the west side of your houses when the sun is the most intense, and you can totally decrease your cooling bill in the summertime. I mean, there's just so many practical purposes for them, including firewood, like we talked about. And they're such fast-growing trees that there's constantly plenty of good kindling that you can use. If you are a barbecue guy, put one of these in your yard. And many people around town are getting more into creating flour from the pods. They grind up the flour. They can make bread out of them. The bread is actually high in protein. So it's a very beneficial plant. In fact, it'd be great to start seeing more restaurants around town using velvet mesquite flour in their ingredients. I love this tree. I hope you do too. So they flower in the springtime, and they can flower again in the summer if there's enough rain. The flowers are tiny, but a few hundred are produced together in a spike, as you can see here, offering a rich nectar resource for insect visitors. The fruit of the mesquite is a dry pod, and we'll come back to the pod. These guys aren't ready, they're just brand new. By the end of the summer, they'll be ready to eat. And these are much tastier than the Chilean mesquite, which is an invasive mesquite that we've brought here because of its thornless qualities, is used in landscapes. The pods are edible on the Chilean, but not nearly as good as these guys. Much tastier. And these are much, from what I've heard, are more nutrient dense. Due to the abundance of this tree in the Southwest, there are uses for the velvet mesquite in a variety of aspects of life. Bees pollinate it, and some enthusiasts claim that it produces the world's finest honey. Now I'm over here at Veterans Oasis Park in Chandler, Arizona, in the riparian area, underneath another beautiful specimen, and I'm here with my buddy, Mr. Michael.
Hey.
A nice hat, by the way. Galaxy Gardens, way to represent, brother.
That's right.
Mike, tell me about the, Mike knows a lot about local foraging, and I wanted to ask you about mesquite, the velvet mesquite pods, and the nutritional benefits. How do we eat them? When do we eat them? The whole deal. So, you know, when's the best time of year to start harvesting these?
So pretty much it's like right before the traditional monsoon season starts. So like people like to remember the date, the 4th of July, when we typically start to get our monsoon rains. And it's very crucial that we pick the pods before it rains. But obviously these ones are not ready yet. Right now we're at the end of May. These have, you know, maybe another month, a little less.
They'll turn yellow, right? And hard.
Yeah,
harder.
They get hard. When you brush them together, they make like a really cool sound. And so that's when you know you're looking for that color, for them not to be green anymore. And then they're gonna fall off pretty easily. And you start picking them and you start tasting them, because there's a lot of different mesquites that you can eat from, but velvet is one of the best ones that you wanna pick from. So start to taste the pods from different trees in your area, because they can vary greatly depending on, you know, the surrounding vegetation, soil, how much water are they getting, different factors on the taste of it. So taste them, because there's very different tastes that you can find.
So when they're really hard, like by the middle of the summer, they can get real hard, actually. Is it kind of past due at that point?
Well, the reason why you don't want to eat them past monsoon season, like when the rains start, is because these pods will start to develop a mold on them with the humidity and the water on them. That's why you never want to eat mesquite pods that are on the ground. You want to make sure that you're picking them off the tree. And that mold can create an aflatoxin, which is pretty much a carcinogen that grows on grains and in the soil and on vegetables, and it's actually really dangerous to consume. So you want to make sure you pick the pods off the trees, and they actually fall off pretty easily when they're ready. So what a lot of people do is they'll take a big tarp or you know, a blanket or a sheet, put it underneath the tree, and then just find a branch, you know, start shaking them down, and they'll all just start to fall on the ground. And that's a way to get a lot at a time, and you could just like kind of move the sheet up, put it in a bucket, keep harvesting. Remember to harvest sustainably. Don't take all the pods off one tree. 10% is a good rule, you know, leave some for the wildlife, because the native plants out here not only feed us, but they feed the wildlife. You'll see coyotes eating mesquite pods and all types of forms of life that love enjoying them. Yeah.
So what, you know, and you talked about the is it a fungus? That was?
It's a fungus that creates an aflatoxin.
Yeah, we don't want to scare you away from trying these. I mean, actually, the purpose of this video is to entice you to start eating more native plants. Tell me about the nutritional benefits of mesquite.
So the benefits of mesquite is it has a lot of sugar in it, actually. So it gives you energy that you can burn right away. So it's great to pick on a hike, you know, walking through on a hot day, give you some energy. The flour can be used to offset baked goods. So if I'm making cookies or I'm making pancakes or other types of baked goods, breads and things like that, I can reduce the amount of wheat that I'm using and supplement it with some mesquite flour, which will make it real sweet. It'll add some nutrients. I'm not 100% sure on the nutrient, like what vitamins or what minerals are in there and stuff, but
high in protein though.
The mesquite pods themselves are higher in carbohydrates than they are protein.
Okay.
But they do have a lot of energy in there, and you can store them for a long time once you get them into a flour.
Right.
So that's the next part of processing it. It's like once you've tasted, you know, you found a good tree to harvest from, you want to get at least a 5-gallon bucket's worth, you know, at least, so that you can process that into a flour. And you can use even just like a handheld coffee grinder. The thing is that these seeds in there are really hard. You do not want to eat the seeds, and they're gonna wreak havoc on like food processors and things like that. So the traditional way of like using them is actually pounding them. So the native peoples would pound into a flour, and then the seeds would be separated out, as well as the chaff. So the seeds and the chaff would go to one place, and then the flour would be stored in another. And the seeds and the chaff actually has a use. You can make a tea out of it. So you don't want to waste any of it. You make a tea. It's a really sweet, kind of smoky kind of flavored tea that you can make from the chaff. And then the flour, like I said, you can bake with it. You can store it. You can eat it just like that. Like I could eat like pieces of mesquite flour like candy. It's so good.
Tasty. You were talking about if someone wanted to make flour out of this, what would be the process to do that?
If you're looking to make a bulk amount of flour, at least a 5-gallon bucket's worth of pods, you know, up to, you know, even more. The fastest way to do it is to use a hammer mill. And in Tucson, they have a community hammer mill. There's a couple groups here in Phoenix area that have hammer mills. One of them is Grow Phoenix, you know, the Phoenix Permaculture Guild. Get with them. They're going to be doing some community milling events. So you bring your sorted mesquite pods, and for a small fee, you can have them ground into a flour. And I think it's a really smart idea as far as like local food security and as far as the health benefits of using the local food and promoting this tree that is so misinterpreted and misunderstood for a lot of people that have planted it. And they have a lot of regrets, you know, they planted in the wrong spot, or they think it's an invasive tree when, you know, this is the tree that brings life to the desert, and we need to appreciate it. And by appreciating it, we're using the food that it offers us. Because if we don't have value in, you know, if we don't see the value in the tree from what it can give us, it's going to become extinct like a lot of other species that we have lost, you know, the reason for why they're here. Yeah. So definitely appreciate the velvet mesquite and plant it in the proper place. Everyone should have a velvet mesquite tree in their neighborhood, at least. You know, maybe on their property. And as you can see, the shade is amazing. Stepping right outside of this shade right here, it's hot. It's a hot day in May.
Although I'll be honest with you, the heat's better because these damn mosquitoes don't like it out here. Sorry for the shaky camera. This is a mosquito haven, but look at that tree. They're so fantastic. I mean, we're trying to help promote the benefits of the native biota, and by us, you know, we've torn down a lot of these. I mean, a lot of areas in Phoenix specifically, I mean, all over, we tore down a lot of mesquite bosques to put our villages, in a sense. So let's bring them back now. Because, you know, Mike, tell me real before we end this, in Brad Lancaster's book, he talks about, let's come back in the shades, I can see you, but he talks about the benefits of, or the difference between velvet mesquite and like a Chilean mesquite in terms of the food for wildlife. Can you just end with that?
So yeah, the Chilean mesquite is very popular in nurseries. A lot of people plant Chilean mesquite. It grows really fast.
Pretty much thornless.
Thornless, yeah. People don't like the thorns, but once this tree's mature, You can come and you can feel it.
Yeah.
There's not many thorns on it.
It's just like it's a lot of the new the new branches.
The new branches, and as it's young, it needs to protect itself. But
Yep.
no, nothing's messing with this mesquite tree, so it doesn't need as much thorns right now. So that's the only benefit really of the Chilean mesquite. Everything else benefit-wise is the velvet mesquite, because like you were saying, Clint, the Chilean mesquite can maybe support a handful of wildlife. You know, birds can nest in it.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
It's better than no tree.
better than no tree. Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
Don't cut down every Chilean mesquite tree you see.
Yeah, no,
and just
no.
have nothing.
Yeah.
You know, we gotta work from where we're at, but the velvet mesquite tree can support dozens more species of wildlife. We're talking about the flowering times of the tree specifically, like are in tune with the native wildlife. You know, the leafcutter bees, you know, the different pollinators and wildlife that use this as food as well. Like, they're relying on the velvet mesquite because the velvet mesquite has a connection with the rhythms of the Sonoran Desert that the Chilean mesquite does not.
Yep, absolutely. Man, that's some great information, Mike. Thank you. Velvet mesquite, ladies and gents. Pick one up. Put it in your yard if you feel so inclined. So let's head over to the National Champion Tree Registry for the Velvet Mesquite. And as you can see by the picture, that is a big, big tree. A big fat boy. This champion Velvet Mesquite was first nominated in 1949 by Gilbert Sykes. It's the largest known tree of its species in the country. It's located in Santa Cruz County. The tree can be found near the town of Bayerville, Arizona, right down there on the Mexican border. The circumference of the tree is 196 inches. The height is 46 inches tall. And the crown spread is 60 feet for a total score of 257 points. Wow.